The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the HighLowSports podcast here for Tier Tuesdays, where we go and grab a random sports subject and we throw things into tiers and see how they rank out. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey. And Kelcey, we're going with a little bit of a blast from the past and looking ahead to the future of this one, and a lot of franchise changing or destroying players today.
Yeah, this is the number one overall picks, obviously, since 2010 is where we're at, which is a unique list of guys. You got some guys still in the league, some guys not even with a team anymore. Some guys could have won an MVP. Some guys won Rookie of the Year and then did nothing. Some guys won Rookie of the Year and didn't do anything, and did a whole lot afterwards. So there's a whole mixed bag of these guys.
Absolutely. We're jumping onto the gridiron kind of based off what we did a couple of weeks ago where we did NBA number one overall picks since 2010. Now we're going to go to the NFL and do that. So here we are taking a look at the list we have available. Starting out from the bottom, we got unproven for some of those young guys. Maybe since NFL could take a year or two for them to get going, some of the guys might go there. We got some regrets, and yes, more than a letter, because some of them just did not quite work out. Some of them a solid player, maybe not number one overall pick, but they weren't a bust by any means. We got the good picks, maybe not number one, but you know what? You can't really complain. And then we got that dude where it's like, all right, you'll do that 10 times out of 10. So we're going to go ahead and get this one rolling. And you know what, Kelcey? I'm going to let you go ahead and lead the way. We got the Oklahoma Heisman Trophy winner, Sam Bradford, leading the way in 2010.
Yeah, so Sammy B is he's a unique guy, right? He wins Rookie of the Year, but then injuries kind of really messed his career. Bounces around, doesn't really play terrible at any team other than I think maybe you can say Minnesota. He played awful there. But you know, overall, Sam Bradford, I'd say, is a solid player. I'm not going to give him much more than that, but I'm going to give him a solid player on this. I don't think he's a great pick. He could have been, but injuries, obviously, and not being in the right system, I think that really hurt him too. But he's not like a some regrets type of guy. There's not that many regrets to this guy.
I will say, too, I think health, obviously, the big thing, his knees were made of porcelain. And that Minnesota stop, I think if he could have stayed healthy that year, that was the year Case Keenum came in and led them to through the Minneapolis Miracle. I think he could have done some damage that year if he could have stayed healthy as well. So I think that's a good spot for him. Next, we got your boy Cam Newton, who's making multiple appearances on Tier Tuesdays now. So we have him here. I'm going to go ahead and put him. This is tough because I'm going to give him that dude, though. He got you an MVP. He took you to a Super Bowl. Like, he didn't win the Super Bowl. He had multiple really good seasons, multiple-time Pro Bowler. Not much more you can ask for. Maybe in the Super Bowl perform a little better, but you're going against a elite defense. He put Carolina on the map, and they've been kind of doo-doo since he left. So he's going to be that dude. He's kind of a little bit ahead of the top of good pick and at the back end of that dude, but at his heyday, he was that dude, and I don't think there's too much to argue with that. So we're going to put him at that dude.
Yeah, of course, I love that pick. Obviously, Cam Newton being the guy. Just for clarification purposes, I picked neither of the categories in which Cam Newton has appeared on the show, so let me be very clear about that.
There's a reason for that.
It was not my choice in which him coming on the show because I didn't want to be biased about it. But no, I wholeheartedly agree. I think Cam Newton belongs in that dude. And that's going to take us to the next pick, and that is Andrew Luck, your guy, your Indianapolis Colt man of mystery. And I say mystery because probably gone a little too soon, but you know what? When he played, it was that dude. Biggest comeback in history at the time in a playoff game against the Chiefs. Absolutely one of the most fantastic players I've ever seen from the game. But I'm going to put him in that dude category because, to me, Andrew Luck was that dude. You talk about him and Cam Newton going back and forth for that MVP year, too, until Andrew Luck with the injury. So, fantastic career, albeit short, very Barry Sanders-esque. Leaves with a little bit of mystery of not knowing what he could finish out with at the end of his career. But you know what? He did the right thing for his health. So, good on him. Now he can enjoy being an architect. But yeah, as far as when he was playing, he was the architect on the field.
Absolutely. It still holds multiple early career passing records as well, too. So it's still withholding the test of time there. So I'm never going to argue putting him in that dude. I just wish he was still that dude because I think if he's still around, who knows where things could have been, especially with the way that roster was put together the last few years. Could you imagine him on that team with Jonathan Taylor a couple of years ago and instead of Carson Wentz? Or that team with Phillip Rivers? That could have been something, but we'll never know.
Him on this team right now with Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman and that team would be a fun team.
Exactly. Or that 2019. Anyway, speaking of that last year's team, we got Eric Fisher, who played for the Colts last year, but was number one overall pick by the Chiefs that year. He's been a good player, but I'm going to put him in some regrets a little bit more than a letter just because he's never really been like a lockdown tackle. Granted, the top of that draft wasn't very good, so there wasn't a whole lot else there. But when you take a left tackle, number 1 overall, you want Trent Williams. You want something like that. You want your blind side fortified, and he's had a good, solid career. Like, he's a solid player, but for number 1 overall pick at left tackle, such a key position, we're going to put him at some regards. Not a whole lot, not a bust, but just.
Yeah, I agree. I think you take a number 1 tackle, you expect greatness, not okay. That's an NFL type of guy for 7 years as a starter, but and I only say 7 because let's be honest, last year he probably could have been a bench player on any other team.
That's true. Turns out.
That's going to take us Jadeveon Clowney next. Oh man, the man who made this list because of 1 tackle against Michigan of all teams. But you know what? I'm not going to take too much away from him. I'm going to say this was a good pick because he's played really, really above average. I mean, again, like kind of like Eric Fisher, I would put him in that dude category. For some people, they believe he is that dude, but realistically, he's not. Realistically, he is an above average NFL player. Probably not a number 1 pick, but in that draft, yeah, I'd say he's a number 1 pick in that draft. In that situation, for the Texans situation, for what the Texans needed, I'd say that's a pretty good pick for them. I know there's some other selections there that probably they could have used as well. Yeah, but let's be honest. At the end of the day, Texans like to pick defense players early on. So, but yeah, I think I'm going to say Clowney is a good pick. This might give me some heat, but I don't think he's deserving of a some regards more than a letter. I also don't think he's deserving of just being a solid player. I think he was just like against the run, especially. I think is the one thing that most people I guess are surprised about. But even though that is his game, he is a good pick, and he's become an above average pass rusher as well. So. I'm going to go Jadeveon Clowney there. Good pick.
My only concern with him is, like, while he is a very good player, as we mentioned too, when you're taking number 1 overall and your career sack total in a season is 9.5, that is your high. And that's when you're playing opposite a 20 sack JJ Watt or 15 sack JJ Watt. I'm like, damn. But he's a good player, so we're not going to take anything away. But like,
that's my thing though, is I think people have a misconception of Clowney, and that's why he's going to be like. That's why I feel like I'll catch a lot of heat on this, is because people think Clowney's a pass rusher, and he's not. Never has been. He's a fantastic run stopper, and knowing that is why I put him at a good pick, is because I believe he is a fantastic run stopper and why he should be drafted number 1 for a run stopping purpose. When J.J. Watt was the pass guy, you got to have a run stopper on the other end.
And we'll agree to disagree. But moving on to one that we probably won't disagree too much on, we got Jameis Winston, number 1 overall pick at quarterback. He's going to go to some regards more than a letter. There wasn't really another choice there if you're Tampa Bay. You had to take him or Marcus Mariota, and neither one's quite panned out the way they had hoped. Ever since he got LASIK, he played a few games for the Saints, but we haven't really seen him since. Led the league in passing yards and interceptions in the same year. So I'm going to put him in more some regards a little more than a letter. I'll put him ahead of Eric Fisher just because there wasn't really another option in that case. But at the same time, when you take a number 1 overall franchise quarterback who had one of the greatest freshman seasons you could imagine, but then his sophomore year, we saw the turnover problem, and those just kind of skyrocketed with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin of all teams. So I'm going to put him in some regards, which is he's been a solid player, but a number 1 overall pick quarterback. It's tough.
Yeah. I don't think that there's much debate there. That is a very safe spot for Jameis. I would like to see him come back after this LASIK stuff and actually see what he can do. I do think, because it was positive for the time he did play before getting injured last season. So we'll see what he can do coming back from LASIK. So that'll take us to Jared Goff, though. Jared Goff, the guy who got traded after going to a Super Bowl. I think that in and of itself, that statement in and of itself makes him a solid player. You went to a Super Bowl, and right now you're leading a Lions team that is, let's be honest, they wouldn't be where they are if it's not for Jared Goff right now. And it's in a lot of ways they had a historic offense last year in the passing game for 7-8 weeks last year, and unfortunately that fell off the tracks once some injuries started plaguing him. But I think Jared Goff is a solid player. I don't think he's a good pick yet. Now that could change this year depending on what he does with the Lions. If you saw one of our previous episodes, I talked about him being one of the quarterbacks with the most pressure going into this year. He's a prove it year. I think that's for sure. If he can prove it, I think he could move himself into a good pick. But I don't think he's a Summer Gertz. I mean, if you're the Rams and you're calling it Summer Gertz for going to a Super Bowl after starting with Jeff Fisher as your head coach, I'm gonna have to question a lot of things for the Rams there. And yes, I know they did then win a Super Bowl with his replacement, but you know what? I stand by my commentary.
That is fair. Before we get to the next ones, I should just say we're going to throw Bryce Young in unproven due to him having yet to even play a training camp in a Carolina Panthers uniform. I think it's fair to throw Trayvon Walker in unproven as well too, considering we got 17 games of him now, so we'll give him at least one more year before we start ranking him. So probably should have done that off the start, but we'll get them out of the way now. But
that's okay.
Speaking of edge rushers, we now got Myles Garrett here, number 1 overall pick, and this one's tough, but I think he has to go into that dude category, considering he's arguably the best at his position in the game. As freakish as it comes, you can't really put him in good pick because he is so much better than anyone else we put in good pick. Even though it's that dude, we want to see like get a defensive player of the year maybe, but he's been awfully close. So I don't think you could put him anywhere else but that dude.
Yeah, it's fair. Obviously me putting Jadeveon Clowney in good pick kind of offsets the market here a little bit. But yeah, no, I think even without Jadeveon Clowney in good pick, I'm still putting Myles Garrett in that dude. He is talked about for defensive player of the year almost every year for the last 3 seasons. And he's done that with multiple different injuries at the time. So yeah, I'm going to say he's that dude. And honestly, it's a matter of time, I feel like, before he wins defensive player of the year. If he can stay healthy through 17 games, I think he wins it for once.
So it might be this year. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. That's going to take it to his former teammate, the Bake Show, as he is now in Tampa Bay. No longer baking in Cleveland anymore. And unfortunately, it was a very short. Yeah, well, he didn't bake at all in Carolina. There was some no bake cookies coming out of that.
He's on that Russell Wilson cookbook.
Exactly. So yeah, no. Look, Baker was what can you say? A season and a half, 2 seasons of good football. Led a team who hadn't been to a playoffs in almost 20 years to a playoff and a victory. But with all that said, it's got to be Summer Gertz more than a letter. You're you're number 1 overall pick, and you've bounced around to 3 teams now. And 4 teams. I forgot about the Rams. You 4 teams in 2 years, and it's not good. Well, I guess it's technically 3 years because he didn't sign with the Bucs till the offseason, but still, 4 teams in 3 years. That's not a good look. You didn't have. I mean, honestly, outside of that one season, the playoff season, where really Nick Chubb carried a lot of the load, and I'll stand by that. And that defense was fantastic. I'm just gonna put him in Summer Gertz, and you know what? That speaks for itself.
Throw on top of that, you have the good likes of Josh Allen in that draft as well, and Lamar Jackson, and a few others. Granted, if those two go to Cleveland, do they turn out the same? Who knows? Like, obviously, those two were guys that developed perfectly in the right spot. But I think that's kind of safe to say. I think if you'd have showed a little bit more in Carolina, maybe it's a solid player, but you saw like since that shoulder injury, it's kind of plummeted since then as well too. And even during those magical runs, you saw some issues. I mean, he has the most turnover since he was drafted in the NFL. So I think some regrets more than a letter. Maybe towards the top of that category, ahead of the other two, because there's a little more time to flip him around. Yeah.
He's got a playoff victory, so that does give him a little bit of an edge on the other guys.
He spotted a 28-0 lead in the first quarter, so I sure hope he does without throwing the ball beyond
seriously.
6 yards. But either way, that's going to move us now on to Kyler Murray, and I'm going to go ahead and put him as solid player. We're going to put him a little bit ahead of Sam. We'll put him between that and Jared. He's been solid. He's done some good things. I mean, rookie of the year, he's been electric. There were moments he's looked like an MVP, but him and Cliff Kingsbury, especially the back half of seasons, just kind of fell apart. Staying healthy, and right now he's obviously looks like he's going to miss most of next year. So we'll put him as a solid player because he could be electric, but there's still a lot of questions, and Arizona's kind of in the driver's seat to have the number 1 overall pick next year. Does he stick, or do they keep him in Arizona after signing him? Do they jump on the Caleb Williams or Drake May train? Depending on how Houston does, you're probably going to have 2 top 5 picks next year, most likely. We'll see what they do with that, but I think Kyler's been solid, but there's some room to improve.
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations. He needs to stay healthy for a season for me to give him a good pick. I mean, his play when he's on the field is a good pick, but you have to be able to play for me to give you a good pick position. Like I can't just be like, oh yeah, he played 3 games in his 3 seasons, and when he played, he was, 400 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. Great, awesome. But that's still, you only played 3 games in 3 seasons. It's the same concept for Kyler. It's just not been good enough. Staying on the field, staying healthy, keeping your body healthy, which is part of being a pro, which is part of being a number 1 pick. You get paid all that extra money to keep yourself on the field. And I think you're exactly right, putting him in a solid player. I will say this could go one way or the other after this season, though. If Kyler doesn't stick around in Arizona and maybe bounces around similar to Baker, you start looking at as that Summer Gertz potentially. Maybe he should have stayed and played baseball. But now on the flip side of things, he goes somewhere else or maybe even stays in Arizona after this season and turns it around, well, that easily slides him into good pick and potentially even that dude, depending on the type of seasons he can put together because he has all the talent. Let's not kid ourselves. He has all the talent. We've seen it at times. It's just never sustained with him ever.
Honestly,
So
he could go play baseball at any time too. So he's good. He's cooking regardless.
And unfortunately, he's used that as a kind of crutch, I feel like, too. So I agree wholeheartedly, solid player. Almost talked myself into saying, maybe let's move into Summer Gertz, but no, I'm not there yet. That's going to move us to Joe Cool himself. I know it's been a short time in the league, but I think we have to put him in that dude. I really do. I think right now he is that dude. I think putting him at the back end of it, just because he's not sustained yet, like not long-term sustained. Also coming off that major knee injury his first year. So, it's been pretty impressive to see after all of that, despite losing a year of playing due to the injury. I think it's safe to say Joe Burrow is that dude. And let's not forget, beat Patrick Mahomes the first 3 times he faced him, who is that dude right now in the NFL. So, got to give credit to Joe Burrow and what he's able to do out there.
Absolutely. I think he's right there. Honestly, by the end of the year, he might be at the top of this list. Who very knows?
Yeah.
Like he's very much trajectory, very high right now.
2 AFC championship games in 3 years. It's not too shabby.
Back to back, yeah. And with both of them only 3-point games too, so they weren't blowouts, and a near Super Bowl W. That'll do. Honestly, if he gets that Super Bowl W, he might be up towards the front of that dude already.
We might just make a new category for just Joe Burrow.
Yeah, it just might be cool at the very top. Yeah. That's all we need. But that's going to take us to the last one on the list. We got Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback for Jacksonville, and I'm going to put him at good pick, and I'm going to put him at the front at good pick. It's a little opposite of what we just said with Joe B, but he's had 2 years. The first one we agreed when we did our predictions does not count because he had Urban Meyer as head coach. He is not held liable for anything that happened that rookie season. That did not happen. That was an elongated preseason of pain. So there's nothing that happened during that first year that I hold against him. Second year, a little rough to start. Back half of it, he got cooking, finished with a great season overall. The highest jump in passer rating from year 1 to year 2 in NFL history, I believe. And on top of that, you win and won a playoff game. Threw a buttload of interceptions early, had a nice comeback late because the Chargers forgot how to hand the ball off, but you still led that comeback. You still threw darts. You were competitive against Kansas City. And it looks like you're going to run away with this division this year as well. You got Calvin Ridley coming in now, so we're going to put Trevor Lawrence as good pick, and he could climb to that dude pretty comfortably too. The prophecy that was with Trevor Lawrence seems to be slowly coming true since 2018 when he was the 18-year-old kid that cooked Alabama. It looks like it's starting to come to fruition a little bit.
Hey, the Prince that was promised, looking a little bit closer to that Prince level right now. It's, it's going to be impressive to see what he does this season. I'm excited to see him and Calvin Ridley. If you guys watch our new segment on Friday, our Fantasy Friday segment, you'll get to see a little bit of what I mean by that this week as we start with our quarterbacks to look out for. But yeah, look, Trevor Lawrence, man, it's going to be fun to watch what he has to do this year. I think if he can put it all together, man, we are looking at ourselves a very, very fun AFC South once all these quarterbacks develop, but especially led by Trevor Lawrence. I think it's going to be him, Patrick, and Joe Burrow in the AFC fighting for who gets to play in the 2 championship spots. Let's not forget Justin Herbert over there, by the way. There's going to be those. Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen as well. So you got, 5 guys that are – yeah, I need Lamar to go to the NFC. Like, at this point in time, I need 2 of you guys to go to the NFC.
3 of them in the NFC. This is getting ridiculous because we haven't even got into those next year, guys. This is just stupid.
Yeah, like, it really is. We're looking at, like, Trevor Lawrence has the chance, like you said, to be that dude come this next season. So it'll be exciting to see what he has to do. And Calvin Ridley, I think, is going to be a big part of that. I don't know. I'm excited to see what Trevor Lawrence can do this year. But I think if we're looking at our list, I think I'm pretty comfortable with it. Maybe that Jadeveon Clowney pick might be the one haunting us, or haunting me at least. But I think overall it looks pretty good.
You know, it's not too bad. I think the Jadeveon Clowney one could jump down to solid player. And I think maybe Sam Bradford we could kick down just because of the injury factor. Like, he's been solid when he plays, but God, he gave you 1 full season. It's when he was 23 years old. Like, since that point, it's been so up and down. And at the same time, maybe a little bit harsh on Jameis, but you know what? This is the list we got with. Let us know in the comment section down below what you think. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Did we completely hose it? Or are we absolute geniuses? Let us know what you think down below. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us on this Tier Tuesday. We will see you all again next week. And be sure to check out our live cast tomorrow at Wednesday at 8 p.m. as well, too. So go ahead and check that out. We'll see you guys next week.